The Number, Another Summer, Sound of the Funky Drummer. So sorry, got us slightly carried away there. 1989 is a massive year for PC games, as titles started to be released which would herald a golden age of PC gaming. It wasn't so rosy elsewhere in the world. The Exxon Valdez was dumping crude oil all over Alaska, and tanks were rolling over protesters in Tiananmen Square. Still, at least the joke had some good advice for us.
Never rub another man's rhubarb.
I'm the Geeky Dad, and this is a history of PC gaming. Well, we've made it, folks. The first year where I really had to think about which game I was going to do a deep dive on, this is the game that won out. Will Wright's SimCity was such a huge game that it moved the needle as to what games could do, and I don't think I could do it justice here in this short description. So tune into my Games That Changed the Game deep dive into SimCity and the impact it had on the games industry. Do you remember a time when Peter Molyneux just released good games? No? Probably because it was such a long time ago. However, in 1989, Molyneux and Bullfrog released Populous. Populous is considered to be the very first God game. The game had you playing as a deity in a fictitious world, and your objective was to get your followers to crush your fellow rival deities. It was the first major release by Bullfrog, which was published through EA. The development cycle for Populous was dominated by playtesting. Molyneux and his small team rigorously playtested the game at each iteration, ensuring the game that had grown out of a tech demo Molyneux had developed continued to be fun. The gameplay was simple but compelling. As the deity, you had a number of powers to shape the landscape to assist your followers in developing their tribe and defeating their opponents over 500 levels. Populous was a hugely successful game. It was estimated that a third of EA's revenue in 1989 was generated by Populous's sales. The game was ported to a huge number of platforms, and on each platform it was favourably reviewed. It won Computer Games World's Strategy Game of the Year, as well as the Origin Award for Best Military Strategy Computer Game of 1990. Molyneux recounted that at the time he was contacted by the Daily Mail, who advised him that because he'd made a game about good and evil, that a fatwa was going to be placed on him, as it was to Salman Rushdie. Although, with a man who's prone to a bit of embellishment like Molyneux, maybe you should take that claim with a pinch of salt. One of the repercussions of the success of Populous was Bullfrog became stalwarts of the simulation and strategy genre. They went on to release many games to great commercial acclaim, including Theme Park, Syndicate Wars, and Dungeon Keeper. Have you seen any of the early Disney movies? Snow White, Cinderella, films like that. They all used an animation technique called rotoscoping. This is where actors are filmed performing an action, and later on, an animator will trace over the frames of the film to get a realistic portrayal of movement in an animation. So what would happen if the same technique was applied to pixels in a video game? In 1989, we got the answer, as Brondabund released Prince of Persia. Prince of Persia was an action platformer which was inspired by swashbuckling films of early cinema. You took the part of an unnamed protagonist who needed to escape the vizier's dungeon and rescue the princess. To do so, you must navigate a series of traps and fight a number of enemies. The game designer, Georgian Mechner, pronunciation of these names will be the death of me, filmed his brother performing the actions of the game's protagonist while wearing white clothes. Jordan then took these images and rotoscoped them with pixels. This gave the protagonist in the game fluid-like motion which hadn't been seen up to that point. When interviewed later, Jordan stated that he'd only used the rotoscoping technique as he wasn't very good at drawing or animation. The development of Prince of Persia took 5 years, and initially was a commercial failure, only selling 7,000 units on the Apple II. It wasn't until the game was ported to MS-DOS and Amiga that it became a massive commercial success. 1989 saw the culmination of Cinemaware's quest to provide a different type of gameplay experience. Cinemaware were attempting to create games with a more cinematic feel to them. For more information on Cinemaware, I suggest an excellent video by Kim Justice which tracks the history of the company. Links in the description below. It Came from the Desert is a cinematic adventure game inspired by classic 50s B-movies Them, and the title also references the 1953 horror film It Came from Outer Space. The gameplay for the game is very different from your usual games of 1989. There is a series of mini-games which are all linked by a narrative structure. The linking sections played like many classic adventure games of the time. Like the majority of Cinemaware's titles, graphics were stunning. In an age where all graphics were still in pixels, the Cinemaware graphics were lush and detailed. The reception to the game was decent, winning Game of the Year from Computer and Video Games magazine. So that was 1989, a great year in PC gaming. We're moving into something of a golden period for PC games, so the next few videos are going to have lots of fantastic games in them. What did you think about the games I featured in this video? Do you have any fond memories of playing them? Please leave me a comment below. I've been the Geeky Dad, and this has been a history of PC gaming.